Hello and welcome to this presentation on how to set a Regency table. So let me move myself around. So in this presentation you'll be getting a geography lesson of a Regency townhouse, one that actually exists. You'll be learning how to lay a table. You'll be learning how the guests behave in this dining room. And it's a special presentation because you'll be taking the role of a servant. So I'll be telling you what you should be doing as a servant. What will you be doing in this meal? I'll be telling you what will be served at the table. And there'll be a little test at the end to see if you've been listening. And if you've been listening correctly and answer the questions right, you can keep your job, or you can be employed actually. You can be employed at the Regency townhouse and come and help us as a servant. So here we go. Let me just show you who I am. So I'm Paul Coachman. I'm one of the volunteers that works at the Regency Townhouse Project. My background is in history and in art history. I also set up restaurants. So we worked in a squatters restaurant in Amsterdam, which is amazing. So I love serving great big groups of people. I've set up my own history cookery business, which is predominantly based on food history as well. So food from the 1830s. I am fascinated by cooking and fascinated by history. And I'm bringing those two together in the Regency Townhouse's kitchen. And in these COVID times, I'm bringing it to life online as well. So where is the townhouse? It's in Brunswick Square in Hove, so that's in the UK if you're viewing this from abroad. We're down on the south coast of Britain. If you look very closely on some of these slides, you can actually see the sea. So here, look, I'm just waving the cursor here. This is the sea, and this is the front of the Regency Townhouse. And if I were to take you there today, we would go through this front door here. Actually, maybe we wouldn't go through the front door because today you're a servant. So you'd probably come through the gate down here, make your way down these steps and come in through the basement door here into the servants' basement or the servants' offices. I'll give you a quick tour while we're here. So at the very front of the house is something called the housekeeper's room, where the housekeeper is one of the highest servants, the highest up the servant hierarchy. She has her offices and her rooms there. Also, she keeps things stored there. Next to her is the servants' hall. So if you watch something like Downtown, you know that's where the servants come together, keep their possessions and also eat their meals together. We've got the staircase that goes upstairs here. So this is more like, this is the staircase that the lady of the house might come down. So that goes up. But if you go along here, passing the butler's pantry, you've got another staircase. And this is more of the servant staircase. This is where people like the chambermaids would go up and down the steps with laundry and with coal and with chamber pots. So this is very much a back staircase that wouldn't have been used by the people upstairs at all. And just to point out upstairs, if you don't know, you've got a dining room here, which is very important for later. You've got a drawing room up here and the bedrooms are up here. And what's lovely, if you go along the corridor, go into the kitchen, we've also got the very back here, we have stables. We have horses here and space for stable boys and grooms up there. So that's a little tour of the house. So I told you to show you. So I just show you back here. Let me just say where I was. This is the kitchen. But if we go back here where I started, this is this area here. So this is the front area of the house. Now we're going down the corridor. I'm moving myself about. It's the corridor here, the staircase I talked about, servants' hall, through to the kitchen at the back here. And there you are, in the kitchen. Here's the kitchen. So I'll make myself a bit smaller. Myself down here. So this is the coal cellar, that's the dresser, got a fireplace here, that's where the range would have been to cook the food, and that is the dresser there as well. So that's the kitchen. And the dining room is here. And let me show you inside the dining room. So the dining room, what's interesting about the townhouse and about all grand houses of this period, the most money for the decor would have been spent in the dining room because you're impressing the guests. So most guests would end up in the dining room, and you want to tell them how good you were, tell them how much wealth you had, and almost how much style you had, how much culture, how much knowledge. So all these classical symbols are here. You've got these beautiful classical columns, you've got these friezes above, and this beautiful ceiling rose in the middle, and these beautiful shutters on the windows, and a very beautiful view. Using the word beautiful a lot outside on the square there. So that's the dining room. That quickly here, this column here is something like this one here. And what you've got here is a sort of niche for the sideboard, and the sideboard is very important later for holding lots of food. But it also contains expensive things. So we've got some very beautiful pictures. We've got some little statues here as well. The sideboard itself would have been very expensive. So it's sort of home altar in a way. It's showing off your wealth to the people who are visiting. And there's lots of scenes here on the wall, often portraits, but sometimes still lifes would be displayed in the dining room. And as you can see here, the table is covered in sort of baize cloth. That's to protect the shiny hardwood surface. And that will be important because that's a layer, one of the layers of the table that we'll see here. So let's get onto the table. So you're a servant today. We have to lay the table. We start off with this base layer, and then on top of that, go 2 tablecloths. This is very important for later. So 2 tablecloths. There are 3 coverings on the table. The base cloth, 1 tablecloth, another tablecloth. So I talked about the sideboard at the back, but we also have small side tables, and these tables contain all the stuff that we will need to lay the table with. So all the cups and the glasses and the various sets of cutlery. So what's important now is at this period in time, service was done, so it was called service à la française, which is, later that becomes service à la russe. So service à la française, everything is on the table at the same time in a series of courses. Service à la russe is the way we formally dine today, for example. So when you get a first course, maybe some soup, or maybe a starter, and then a main course, and then a pudding. For example, here you have all different, lots of different courses, and all the cutlery that will go with them. So this is service à la russe. This comes in later. It begins in 1812 in Russia. That's why it's called service à la russe. Slowly works its way through, down from the royal, from the court, from the nobility, works its way down. But it works its way down incredibly slowly. So service à la française, this way of eating, carries on for a long time. And what's interesting, I've just got a tweet about this today. Somebody in, I think it was France or Russia, in the 1940s, she carried on eating in this way. So she didn't adopt this way of cooking or this way of serving food. That came later. So when you're a guest at the table for service à la russe, there are 3 things to remember. One of them, because all the food, I should say, when you walk in, all the food is laid out for the first course on the table. Remember, you don't have to eat everything. The guests will be helping themselves. They'll be passing things around to themselves. And the other point I'd like to make is that leftovers are important. It's almost impossible to eat everything on the table, and you'll see later, how much actually is on the table. And so food would be left over. So food wouldn't be wasted. It would have been reused for either breakfasts or lunches, and I love this idea, some people would have one grand dinner party on one day. The next day they'd have another dinner party, reusing some of the food. And you'd invite people to the second dinner party that weren't so important as the first. And often people who were invited to these parties actually knew and would get very offended by not being invited to the grand first dinner party, but would but I would end up getting invited to the second. This is mentioned in one of Thackeray's novels. And so you feel like you've been fobbed off, basically. So, as I said, everything's on the table at the same time. So this is the layout for a first course for in February, you see here. We've got soup, very important. And we've got some roasts here as well, and some smaller dishes based around here. I can see tongue and I can see chicken here as well. And these are little oyster pâtés, it says here. And in this meal, so what happens is all this food is eaten as far as it can be eaten, taken off the table, tablecloth is lifted up, and then all these new dishes are put down, and this is the second course. And what's really interesting and what you should remember about this is you've got a mixture. See if I've got some here. Yes, I've got pompadour cream. And what else have I got? Yep, apple puffs. So what we've got is a mixture of sweet and savoury. So you don't wait until the dessert. You get everything at the same time. And I like to compare this to the way maybe the Chinese and Indian people sometimes mix dishes together at the same table. This is left over from the medieval and the Tudor periods where the same is happening. So let's start with the first course. As someone who's serving, you have to listen out for these signs. The hostess will say, either you see your dinner, which means that for the first course, everything is on the table that you're going to eat for that first course. Or she will say, there will be a remove. And if I go back here and show you here soups at the two ends, what's possible is that the soups are placed there first. So everything is basically on the table. The soups come up. The soup is served, eaten quickly. The soup tureens are taken off and something is put in their place. And that is called a remove. So when the hostess says there will be a remove, she means that the soups, here we go, the soups will be removed and replaced by something else. Maybe in this example, fish. First soup, removed fish. We've got fowls here. We've got vol au vent. Remember from the 80s, very popular back then. We've got eel, which is delicious. Cheek of eel. We've got tongue, and we've got sweetbreads as well. And I've got down here, when everyone has eaten, empty the table, remove the tablecloth, like I said earlier, to reveal a clean one underneath. And then we carry on eating. Here we go, second course. We've got creams, like I said, sweets. We've got pastry, maybe sweet pastries, and we've got these various savoury dishes. There's ragu here, celery, obviously cooked macaroni, very popular. Cauliflowers coming into their own in the 18th century, difficult to cultivate, very prestigious. So if you had a cauliflower on your table in the 18th century, it was like the eighth vegetable of its time. Some game there as well. Piece de resistance, I love that, piece de resistance. You have to resist all these other things to get to the piece de resistance. The piece de resistance is a great big carved, maybe a roast beef, something very beautiful and expensive in the middle. So that's the main dish, and then you've got all these side dishes as well. So that's your second course. And then, and I love this, because dessert is actually from desservir, or desservi from French, which basically means deserved. So what you do on the third course, you take away all the second course, you deserve, and then you get this sort of empty table, and they take off the tablecloth and the bays underneath, and often there will be table mats, and you'll see, especially if you go around country houses and stuff, and if it's set up for dessert, you'll see the empty table, polished wood table, with often with table coverings. Yeah, there's little pads that go under dishes, but the table, apart from that, bare. And this would be it's a sort of refreshing, of course, at the end. So the idea is you've got little bowls of water, you've got rose water, you've got some serviettes to wash your fingers and your hands. Everything smells very beautiful, and you've got these very light things to finish off your meal. So look, we've got some fruits, pears, oranges, tiny cakes, a few nuts, there's some raisins and almonds here, a few apples. So it's very light finish to the meal, to that very heavy meal that you saw there. So dinner is finished. Just the clearing up to do. But, and this is important, have you been paying attention to this presentation? Will you be able to answer the questions that I put to you now? Let's hope so. So we get the housekeeper coming in. If you've not heard of Mrs Finnegan, there's another presentation on my YouTube video about Mrs Finnegan herself. She's the housekeeper. She lived in that front room that I showed you on the slide. Do you know enough to impress Mrs Finnegan? Will you know enough from this presentation to answer these following questions? Here we go. These are multiple choice questions. First one, how many table coverings are there on the table as the meal begins? A, 1, B, 2, and C, 3. Do you remember? The answer is 3. I hope you got that right. Are the guests supposed to help themselves? A, absolutely not. Servants do that. B, yes, servants will help them. What do you think the answer to that is? It's B. People hand dishes around to each other. There will be servants standing behind the chairs to help lift some of the heavier things and to make it all better and possible. But guests are supposed to join in. Later, with service à la Russe, with that very codified, strict serving style, the guests are almost helpless. Everything is done around them and for them. But in this serving style, it isn't. How many courses are served at a meal served à la Française? A, 2, B, 3, or C, 4? What do you think? Yes, it's B, 3. What is a remove? A, it's a dish that's removed to be replaced by another dish. B, it's the second course. C, it's when you move house. Now for this one, I will accept, I'd like you to say A first, but I will accept B as well, because some people do say that courses are removed, so the course could be seen as a remove. But basically a remove is when it's a dish that's removed to be replaced by another dish. So often soup will be removed to be replaced by fish. So one more question. If the hostess says, you see your dinner, what does she mean? A, there are no removes. B, she's lost the plot. C, you may start your dinner. And again, just another trick question. Sorry about this. A, no, actually it's C first. You may start your dinner. If the hostess says you see your dinner, that means there are no removes. But that's A as well. So A, there are no removes, and C, you may start your dinner. Both of those were acceptable. How did you do? If you did really badly, you can go back in this presentation, watch it again quickly, and then check your knowledge again. But if you've done well, you're hired. You can start working at the townhouse. You know enough not to make yourself silly as a servant during the service. Here are some of the books that I've been using for this presentation. Yes, they're all here. So do save the screen. Have a read of them. This one here, which you probably can't see, is Elizabeth Rundle. It's a contemporary book, which I love as well. So I haven't just got these secondary readings. I've also got primary readings as well. So, but these are great. Oh, and this actually is a primary reading in a way. It's actually written by servants who were present at one of these meals. So these are further readings for the people who are very keen. And that's it. Thanks very much for watching. If you'd like to know more about me or about the townhouse, I also have a website, and the website address is www.paulcouchman.co.uk. Thanks very much for watching.